You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 369, Life Beyond Survival Mode, a client case study with Amy Pearson. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I am so looking forward to you meeting our guest and my client, Amy Pearson. Amy is the owner and principal designer of Amy Pearson Design in Portland, Oregon, a design studio that specializes in design for construction projects, including kitchen and bath remodels, whole home remodels, and new construction design. Outside of design, Amy is also a wife and a mother of 15-year-old boy and girl twins. Her family is her entire world and the center focus and why for all her business decisions. And you are going to hear more about that in today's episode. You're going to hear about how we met, how she made the decision to work with me, and you're going to get the behind-the-scenes story of where was her mindset, what challenges was she dealing with before we worked together. And then we're going to go through and talk about how we approach those challenges through coaching. I remember when she shared with me over a lunch at a conference the details of what her stressors were, what her challenges were in her business. And I remember looking at her dead in her eyes and saying, "This is solvable, and you are closer than you think." And I meant that from the bottom of my heart. But what she couldn't see is that it was solvable. What she couldn't see is that it was closer than what she had thought because she was in the middle of it. And I think you're listening to and you can relate. You can relate to being in the trenches of your business. Maybe you feel like you're drowning. Maybe you feel like there is no other way to navigate your business. And I also want to share with you the power of partnering with somebody that can see things from a different perspective. When you partner with somebody that can see things in a different perspective, they can invite you to see them in that way and help lay the groundwork for the stepping stones to get out of your current situation. That is exactly what I do with my clients. Every client's story has different variations. But I think when you listen to Amy, many of you are going to resonate with so much of her story. And stay tuned because 1 year later, everything looks different for her. And I can't wait for you to experience and hear that story and what it took to get to the other side. As you're listening to this episode, there are going to be lots of lessons, lots of nuggets, and you're going to hear what it's like to work with me. So if you've been on the fence, or maybe you haven't even thought of hiring a business coach because you're not quite sure what that experience is or how it can really help you, I want you to listen in and see, would partnering with a business coach who can help you navigate the waters and the trenches of business so that you can experience your business differently, so that you can bring more joy and less stress into your life. That is my goal for each of my clients. So at the end of today's episode, if you are interested in working with me or finding out ways we can work together, you're going to want to head on over to my website, amberdelagarza.com. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to the podcast, Amy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Amber.
I really appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit of your story and your experience working with me today. And I think there's going to be a lot of lessons and encouragement. That's my goal, is I think this is going to encourage a lot of other business owners through your journey. So before we get into your story or our story of working together, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, personal, business, whatever you'd like to share with us.
Sure. So I am a residential interior designer in Portland, Oregon. And we focus mostly on the design for construction side. So in our market, we have a lot of remodel business. We do have some new construction as well. But those are the two primary focuses for us from a design perspective. And I have a team of 3, including myself now. In terms of people that I delegate tasks to, I also have a CPA that I work with, both personally and professionally. I have a website developer that I touch base with episodically for updates on the website and rebrand. And I think that covers, and then you.
Yes, and then me. Exactly. So that is your team. Can you tell us what the roles are of your other 2 team members?
Sure. So I have a design assistant and I have a studio designer. So our studio designer does not sit in Portland. She sits in Washington, and she focuses primarily on the drawing side, the drawings, and also the spec writing for our client projects.
Yeah.
So heavy computer-based work. So where she sits doesn't particularly impact the work that she takes on. And then the design assistant is here in Portland. She helps me with running around and errands around town and, picking up little extra measurements from job sites, things like that. But then also she does a lot of scheduling for our client projects and working through the client process. And then she does do a lot of design board creation as well.
Yeah. And then client onboarding. She helps
And
with
client
as well.
onboarding. Yes.
All right. Excellent. And how long have you been in business?
This is 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations. We'll have to celebrate that for sure. Good job on getting to 10 years.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to jump right into how you and I met.
Okay.
Because this is a unique story of how I met you as a client. So I was actually a speaker at Luann Nigara's event in Florida. Mm-hmm. This had to have been in, can you believe we're going to say 2023?
2023, November.
It literally feels like it was yesterday. Okay, so November of 2023. And you were an attendee at the event.
Yes.
And Luann and I and a couple other people were drinking in the bar before the event even started. We were having some drinks, not drinking. Right. That sounded far more exaggerated. We were having some drinks, and you were at the bar, right? And Luann was like, "Hey, are you here for the event?"
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let you take it over from here.
Yes. I actually had forgotten that it went back to the night before the whole event started too. But yes, I had flown in. I chose to go to Luann Live solo. I didn't have any other industry friends or other designer friends in Portland that were going. But when I read through the speaker list and thought about the things that I was really struggling with as a business owner at that point in time, I just felt really, really called to go to the conference. So
yeah.
I flew in that night and I did go into the bar, had dinner and a glass of wine. And Luann walked in, and it was like one of those little star moments where you're like, oh my God, that's
yeah. I get it.
I smiled at her. She walked over and she's like, "Are you here for the conference?" And I said, I'm here for you. Yes. And she gave me a big hug and then invited me over to the table where you guys were all hanging out, and we enjoyed some great conversations with everybody before the conference got started.
Yeah. So it was I always joke. I have one of my best friends that I picked her up at a bar, but really it was a podcasting conference. And so you were like my second. I picked you up at the bar, but it wasn't me. Luann
Yeah,
was my
Luann picked me
wing
up.
woman. Luann was my wing woman. So, but that was like the first, like we actually met. But why we're starting here is because it was so interesting. So, it felt like a large conference, but we were all in the same hotel.
Yes.
And every time we turned, you and I were bumping into each other.
Yes.
Passing each other in the halls, in the elevator, in the bathrooms. It didn't matter. I felt like we were catching each other's eyes. We were catching up. We were chatting. And I'll just say what I told you, which I meant 100%. Like, I felt like you were my person I was supposed to meet there.
Yes.
Many years ago, I realized that there was this like trend of like, we go to conferences to learn things and we want to meet people and stuff. But I always have an intention to like meet somebody that I can make a real connection with, because it can get overwhelming to just have all that like chit chat and small talk. And I realized it like day 2. And I think you were in the bathroom or something. We were in the bathroom. I'm like, I think you were the person I was meant to meet here.
Yes. I agree though. And I think that's such a great way to think about going to those conferences. I mean, there was a million wonderful nuggets of information.
Yeah.
Even speakers where I thought this is maybe not going to apply as much to me and my business model. There was always something to take away. And in addition to that, I did walk away from the conference with the feeling of meeting you was by far the most impactful part. And
Aww.
I just knew that ultimately at the end of the day, you were the reason why I was meant to be there, and working together was in our near future.
Yeah, yeah. And when I say when we were supposed to meet, like at that point, it was like friendly, like as friends. Yes. And then as we started talking and evolved, it was like, yeah, I think actually this other relationship of client coach could work out too.
Right.
So then the event's over and we weren't flying back because it's hard to get flights all the way to the other side of the country. And so we ended up going to lunch with a couple other ladies, and we were able to dig in. I think that was when we kind of dug into your business. We were all talking business and getting more detailed and intimate about it. Right. So I think that's a good jumping off point because that's when we thought at first that would be, maybe we should work together. What does that look like?
Right.
What were some of the challenges or frustrations that you were having in business at that time that you were looking to get move through and get support with?
Yeah. So I think the biggest driver for me wanting to go to that conference, and the biggest question that I was seeking answers to, is it does go back to my family and the personal aspect. So I'm mom of 15-year-old twins. They're freshmen in high school. And I was staring down the road ahead of them going into high school, and then a few short years later going off to college. And the weight of that timeline was weighing heavily on me. And we, the 4 of us, my husband and Jacob and Taylor and I, are a very close family unit. We're very tight. We spend a lot of time together. So there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of sadness that I have when I think about them moving on with their life and not being at home full time. And so what I really wanted, and I think the reason why we all go into business for ourselves, is where we can hopefully create a company where we're serving ourselves as a person, as a human being, as a family member, whatever our everyday life looks like, so that we can be fulfilled in those aspects of our lives and not just work to work, but
Absolutely.
work to live. And so I was really seeking answers in that aspect. And in addition to, the time that I wanted to spend with them, I wanted to back off from work in a sense that I really wanted their after school hours and and my weekends, which I had historically been pretty good about protecting my weekend time. But the after school hours and all that extra time that I had with them, I really wanted to be able to be present and focus and commit to them. But at the same time, we were looking at sending our kids to a private high school where tuition is very expensive, and it is
Times two.
times two. Yes. And it is a financial sacrifice to send them to a school where they ultimately did end up going. And so I felt like my goals were pulling me in two different directions. In the one hand, I wanted to have more time with them. I wanted to pull back on work so that I could be very present and not feel like I was letting something in work slip when I was committing my time and energy to my family. But then on the other hand, I had this huge increase in cost coming down the road of wanting to pay for their private school tuition. So it felt like I was being pulled in opposite directions. And
Yeah.
I am proud of the business that I had built
You
the
should
9
be.
years prior to you
Yeah.
and I working together.
Yes.
And the obstacles that I had overcome. But I knew this one was I just had this feeling in my gut that this one was not one to just try and limp through. At the end of the day, it was only 4 years down the road, and I wanted an answer right now, or
Right.
as
And you
quickly as
wanted this solved right now. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wasn't wasting time trying to get to where I wanted to be, and wasting the time that I had to spend with them.
Yeah. So beautifully said. And I will just say that you wanted to be able to, because I think at the end of the day, you would have taken the time to sound that I know you and I know your love and your dynamic of your family. So I would just add a layer of and guilt free. So like really being able to take it and take it guilt free is a big little, you know, we need to put that in there because a lot of people deal with the guilt. They may do it, but it's not joyful. And we really wanted this to be joyful that you were able to cut back.
You're spot on. And I chuckle only because I think I still battle with the guilt a little bit. That comes down to mindset, and some of those deep rooted mindset stories that we tell ourselves
Yeah,
they take time to work away from, and it's a
that's right.
practice. But yes, you're absolutely right. I did want it to be a happy experience
Yeah.
of adjusting my work to be able to fulfill this aspect of my time as a mom.
Yeah. All right. So, what we're going to do is now journey through how we, through coaching, systematically approached solving for different things in the business
Yeah.
that we'll share what the end result is when we get to the end. I just want to like blurt it all out, but I'm going to like ruin the whole story. So, we'll take it step by step. So, stay tuned. I'm such a bad storyteller. I just want to get excited about the end. So that is currently where you're at. And I remember hearing all of this as we're chit-chatting and talking. And I remember specifically looking at you and telling you, probably tears in my eyes, because I'm getting tears now, and telling you this is solvable and you are closer than you think.
You did
And
say
you
that.
did not believe me.
I did not believe you, but
I
you did say
repeated it
that.
multiple times. I'm like, girl, you have built something amazing, because now I got to dig into the business and like see where you're at. And for you, because that's all that matters, felt like it was impossible. Like you are torn in two different ways. And the perspective I believe a good coach can give is a different perspective.
Mhm.
And my perspective was, okay, actually, I see some dots here. We're going to attack, but you are much closer than you think.
Mhm.
Can we at least tell that part of the story? Were you closer than you thought?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I think one of the pieces where I was a lot closer than I thought was in the financial aspect. I was taking a look at what I was billing to clients for design fees. So, the backstory of that being at that point in time, I was and had been for the 9 years prior billing hourly for our design work. and providing clients an estimate of the number of hours that I thought it would take to execute design, but ultimately still billing hourly, and whatever the work took is what we billed for. And I had started a process of analyzing and digging into what did I estimate versus what did I actually bill, and what were the costs associated and all of that, and just kind of looking at profitability of the project, but in comparison to what I had projected.
Yeah. Now, I just want to interject. First of all, we need to just recognize your systems were incredible. They were documented. Your workflow of how you served your clients had been refined and refined over time. So all of this is what you came to me with was documentation, tracked. You had exactly how many hours projects had taken in the past. You had them organized by similar projects and trend.
Right.
So you had this data, but what you had not done is analyze it in a different way, which is what I asked you to do as soon as I saw this information.
Yes. Yeah. And so I had I created a spreadsheet, and I plugged all of that information, and I looked at it, and the story that it told me was I was not billing what I had estimated. In fact, I was underbilling. And not in the sense that I wasn't billing for my time. I was very diligent. My team is very diligent about tracking time down to the 5 minutes. But what it had told me is that we had gotten very efficient, which is wonderful. And
should be rewarded. That would be the theme of this. It should be celebrated and rewarded. And when you analyze the data, that was not what was happening, right?
I was actually being penalized for being efficient in our design.
Having incredible systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so penalized because this is my language, she was leaving money on the table.
Yes. And so what you helped me do in one of our first few sessions is walked through that spreadsheet with me. I told you, where did the data come from? What is the data that's showing? How far back does it go? And you helped me run just a couple other comparisons in terms of do we increase hourly rate and stay at the same billing process, or do we actually convert the time estimate that I was originally giving to these clients, and they were signing a contract, but just convert that into flat fee instead of hourly, and what would have been the revenue difference? And I believe we looked at it, and it was substantial money that was left on the table over the course of almost 2 years.
Right. And so just for real clarity, left on the table meaning she had contracts with people that said, sure, I'll pay you XX. And then she got done with the job, delivered an amazing service. And she's like, great news. It only cost you X. And they're like, so happy and wonderful. Yeah. But you got so efficient at the process that you were not now looking at it as pricing for the value.
Correct.
It was just time in, time out. And I just want to give a little disclosure here. You may be the only client where we started with pricing model first. Okay. So it doesn't always start there. And I hardly ever tell somebody to go from hourly to flat fee. It's usually I'm telling clients the opposite until they get to the point where their systems and processes are so great, then it's a no-brainer to go flat fee. And I just want that in context of if you do not have your systems nailed down, if you are not efficient, your team's not running efficiently, you are probably bleeding money on a flat fee or don't even know you're bleeding money. And so this is like literally all of my coaching. One size does not fit all. You
Right.
have to understand context. You have to understand the history. You have to understand where you're going. And so the advice isn't textbook. And I just want to give that disclosure because there's probably a lot of people listening that are like, great, I'm going to substantially increase my revenue. I'm going to go to flat fee. And it could be the thing that hurts them. So I just want to give that, got to
Sure.
have a lot of context. And so what Amy said was, I came to the table with data, background, systems, processes. Now I want to talk about, we get to the point, and in no time did I say, you're going flat fee. I just
No,
highly pointed to some facts for you to consider.
you did.
I would like you to share your process for making that decision because I think that will resonate with a lot of listeners. It was not dollar signs. Here I go. I'm making the decision today. You really had to give it some thought.
I did. I sat on it for quite a while. And I thought about the aspect of selling it too.
Yep.
I had sold hourly in terms of my pitch conversations with clients. I had sold hourly for so many years that it really came as a very comfortable conversation. I had to think about that. We talked about that actually, the process of selling hourly versus selling flat fee. And, did I feel like I could have those conversations with potential clients about moving
Yeah.
to flat fee? But yeah, it took me quite a while to get to the decision. And I think the other piece that weighed in there too, and it was part of our conversation and part of the reason why we started working together, was there was an element of burnout that was in there for me as well. And the problem that I was running into with billing hourly for my client projects is that it just takes so many more projects to get to a higher revenue number.
Right.
And I'm sure
That
we'll
was
get into it.
counterintuitive to your goals
It
of
does.
working
Yes,
less and
exactly.
increasing revenue.
Yeah. And I was going to say I'm sure we'll get into more reasons as to why the burnout was in play, but it was an aspect of it. And I just really was at a point of desperation of, I physically can't keep going like this or do any more to make more to pay for high school tuition. I really need somebody to help me find the answers.
Yeah. And so there's never any pressure in making a decision. I knew you needed your process. And what I thought you were going to say about the burnout is that sometimes the timing is not right to make big decisions in your business because of your current physical or mental state. And that is always something that should be considered when you're navigating these things.
That's true.
And I always want something like that to be a hell yes. And you did at your own time. And when you say quite a long time, it was not quite a long time. Like, I mean, maybe it was 2 more sessions later, which would have been
I
a
was gonna
month.
say, I think it was
Yeah.
like 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you've done something for 9 years, that was not that long, in my
True.
opinion.
True.
And you really needed to just like work it through from all the different angles. And so I just want to like kind of explain, if you hired me as your productivity coach, your goals were to increase revenue, decrease workload, decrease stress. Why did we start with your business model, billing, right?
Mhm.
And you were being incentivized to work on your business. And
Mhm.
so when we get excited to do things to work on our business, which is what it requires to go to the next level to grow revenue, you're like, every minute I'm working on my business, I'm not billing. It sounds so counterintuitive. And I think that that's something that resonates with a lot of people that are either flat rate or not, but see that every hour they're not working with a client or doing services that are traded for dollars. You're taking away when you're working on the business. And I feel like you really felt that and were able to articulate that feeling.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I did. I ran into that issue of and you used the word and it's perfect. I felt very
De-incentivized.
de-incentivized.
I literally had to like slow down and say it too. Yeah, I may have not even said it correctly.
To work on the business because I
Yeah.
knew I had a number of hours in the back of my mind of each day I have to bill X number of hours. And if I do, then that's how I will hit my revenue goal. And it really was a lot of billable hours in a day.
Yeah.
And so then the work on the business had to come after that.
Yeah.
Or if I had a day where I spent more hours working on the business, then my billable hours had to be made up in another day.
That's a lot of pressure
It is a
and
lot of pressure.
stress. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you decided to make the change to go to flat rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after you made that decision and then like sessions after that, it was like, like you were floating. Like literally, it felt like so much weight had come off of you. And that was my perception. You can share your own experience. But I feel like once you made that decision, or maybe even once you're able to sell that package and kind of like figure out what that new language was and like, will somebody say yes? Because we have those thoughts. It felt lighter for you.
Yeah, yes, 100%. Yeah, I think at one point, a couple sessions later, you asked me, like, are we sticking to this? Have you changed your mind? How are you feeling? And I was like, absolutely, we're sticking to this. We are
Yeah.
not going backwards because it instantly felt like a huge amount of pressure and weight taken off, and that it was truly okay to be running such an efficient process.
Yeah.
And that I actually got to experience the enjoyment and the return on that investment of creating an efficient process and running through a project quickly and smoothly. And I didn't have it in the back of my mind of, okay, well, that's great. We got through that project really quick, but now I actually have to fill in with more
Right.
because I'm not going to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. So now another way in which we're addressing the core challenge of increased revenue, decreased hours, decreased stress was the writing was on the wall. You needed to hire.
Yes.
So can you share with our listeners a little bit about your hesitation in hiring and some of the challenges that we, coached through and worked through around hiring?
Sure. So when you and I met at Luann Live, I was at that time a team of two, myself and one other. Courtney, who's our studio designer, she was the other team member that was with me at that time. But I had been a team of three prior to that. And that person was going through a really difficult time in her life and faced with a lot of really big personal challenges. And through that was communicative with me, but also was very transparent and said, look, working with you is how I feel like I can stand on my own 2 feet. And I need more work. I need more billable hours in order to be independent and get myself through this difficult transition. And so, in order to accommodate that and help her, I guess I will say too, she was going through a divorce, but she's a mom,
Mhm.
and I was raised by a single mom, and so there was an element of a personal heartstring, I guess, for me,
Yeah,
where I just felt like
absolutely.
I really wanted to help another woman go through this and be independent and care for herself and care for her kids. And so I took on more and
More
more,
projects,
more
more work,
projects, more
more
work.
billable hours so that you could do this. Mhm.
Yes. But unfortunately, that was what she was saying. But on the other side, what actually happened is there was a significant reduction in work that was actually being executed and hours that were being committed to my projects. And so ultimately, I ended up being left with the workload of three to be done by two. And Courtney did help with some of it, but I really had to pick up the rest of the slack that was
Yeah.
left.
And so by trying to do something out of kindness, you made business decisions. And when you were left holding the bag, I would say that was a lot of where I met you and led to the burnout was this like so many more hours needed to be worked, so many more clients needed to be dealt with. Like the workload was not sustainable.
No, it wasn't at all. And a lot of it was that specific circumstance, but I would also say, especially now that I'm in a different position and kind of on the other side of that experience, I would say, as we're having this conversation, you recently posted another podcast interview, and I'm trying to remember who it was that you were talking with, but you had a conversation or you made mention of a point of, and maybe it was just a solo episode, but you made mention of a point of like when you're an entrepreneur and you're first getting started, it's yes, and it's I will
Mhm.
do whatever it takes to get going and get moving and get growing and all of that, and that there's that grind of getting started.
Yeah.
And it is hard when you are the one that's in the middle of it. It's hard to know where that actually needs to come to an end and where you need to transition into a more seasoned business owner aspect of having more balance and just not having to
Do
grind
things,
too
yeah,
much.
and do them the way you had done them. So I love that you said that. So it wasn't just that situation. That was a situation with hiring in your team, but really this was years of habits. So we'll link out to the episode, but it was called Beyond the Hustle 21
Yes.
Sustainable Habits. And really you nailed that theme was, look, there are going to be things that we've done and we do to get the business off the ground, but what had served you may not continue to serve you. And are not sustainable, thus the title of the episode. And you got to the point where there was some habits and some ways that you were working in the business that you were ready to unwind.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
you have. So that's
Yes.
great.
So, you and I worked on updating the job description and going through tasks that this potential new person could work on. Again, another spreadsheet that I had created. I think I'm unique in the industry of design of actually liking my
Yes,
spreadsheets.
you do love spreadsheets. I should just send you like client love notes via spreadsheets and you'll be
Yeah.
happy.
um, but another spreadsheet that I had really broke out and had notes on like, do I actually have to be the one that can do this, or could this task go to a design assistant? And running through a standard design process for a typical project of ours, what are all of the tasks that could actually be delegated to a design assistant role? And then looking at those tasks and how do we build a role out of that? And then, what is the type of person that we're looking for? How many hours, skill sets, background, W-2 versus 1099. I mean, you and I walked through so
All of
many
it.
different aspects of it. Yes. And ultimately ended up landing on adding another 1099 to the team
Mhm.
in a design assistant role. And it's been amazing.
It has been amazing. And I have loved seeing your growth with your leadership, your confidence. Like honestly, once you got past that hire, we have barely talked anything further. Like your team is just flying. And this was another key point that I believe you were stuck on of like, I tried it, I got burned, like it did, like what if I make other decisions? Like there was a lot of mindset plus strategy that we worked on. Then once you made this hire and it was an incredible hire, it's been night and day.
It has been night and day. And I think having you as a sounding board and somebody that I can ask my questions to and I can, pose my hypotheticals, or we can have the, well, if then that, or if that then this type
Yeah.
conversations has been so incredibly impactful.
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple more things I want to make sure that we talk about. So what has your work-life balance been like today?
It's improved so much. There is And like I said at the beginning, I was pretty good about protecting my weekend hours, but that has remained very protected. And now I really don't go back to work after I pick up my kids from school. I hang out with them, I relax, I tackle things, for the house that would have been left until way late at night. I go to the gym.
You
I'm
go on
able
walks?
I go on walks. I'm able to take care of myself more. So it's been a huge transformation.
Okay. All right. So what I have seen is that you have been able to increase your capacity. It was all work. It was from billable hour to billable hour to billable hour. You changed your business model. You hired and you got help. We worked on time management, other productivity strategies, some other things we haven't obviously talked about. We
Yep.
worked together for, well, it's been a year now.
It's been a year.
We're just 1 month shy of a year. That you were also able to think what's next in the business. So you got out of survival, you got out of burnout, and then you were able to be like, and what other revenue streams would I like to add to the business? Which
Yeah.
is a true sign of you have mental capacity.
Yeah. Well, and at one point, a few months ago, you and I took a look at the time tracking, and because that's still a huge aspect. Despite moving to flat fee, we're still just as diligent about time tracking. But
Can
we
you say
looked,
that again? I'm sorry. I really want to make sure we hear that.
despite moving to flat fee, we are still just as diligent with time tracking. I would almost argue it's even more important when going
Okay.
flat fee than hourly, but
Yes.
just because you really have to have that data in order to generate a solid flat fee. But one of the things that we looked at was percentage of billable hours versus percentage of non-billable. So in the business versus on the business, and it inversed.
There's
So
some good data there.
yeah, where
So
I
we were
had,
just talking a few minutes ago that you felt guilty if you worked on the business. You were squeezing it in. You would make up for it. And now you flipped it.
Mhm.
And you find a lot of joy working on the business.
I do. I have discovered that I actually really enjoy working on a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1 year, you're going to make me cry now. In 1 year, you went from like burnout, pulled between wanting to work less, increase profitability so you can contribute to your kids' education, to flipping your business model, increasing revenue, increasing profitability, decreasing your stress, making time for self-care, making time for the family, changing your own job description from the designer in there, like working in the business. So you get to work on the business, lead the business. You're working on marketing. You're working on additional revenue streams. You're working on leading your team.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So can you share with us, did your kids make it to private school?
They did. They did. They are at a private high school and they're just thriving. Yeah, they're doing great.
Okay, we can cut this if you're not comfortable, but I
No,
will
I'm
just
great
say
with it.
that she was able to pay it in full within months of us starting this process of working together. So she was worried, can I even swing it? Can I make it? And she was able to pay it in full and then continue to look at what's next for the next years because they've got 3 more years and college and really not coming from a place of like fear. Like it's like, okay, it was a challenge. I did that. Like, what's next? And I
Mhm.
don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you came to a coaching session and you're like, "Psst, so I paid it in full," I was like screaming, so much joy and happy for you,
I
happiness for
actually
you.
think I just sort of slipped that
You
in, and you're
totally
like, "Wait,
slipped it
wait,
in.
wait.
Yeah.
Hold on. You are not getting away with just slipping that in there."
Oh, right. Well, sometimes my clients like to slip in their wins. And I'm like, oh no, like these are the moments where we're working towards is
Yeah.
to celebrate that. So that's why I wanted to bring
It
it up,
is
is to
it
celebrate you.
Yep, it is a new act that I am working on is celebrating the wins. And I appreciate that that is something that you encourage your clients to do so much, because it is so easy when you are in the middle of being a small business owner to just keep rolling right on past them and, okay, great, got that done, now what's next,
Mhm.
and not take a minute to celebrate the wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible. So I want to just transition to another topic, which is you joined us in Vegas for the VIP business planning event in November of 2024. And I
Yes.
just wanted to get a little bit of your experience with that. Why did you decide to join us in Vegas? You can just start with that. So I put the event together, I send the invitation out, and you decided to say yes. So why did you decide to join us in Vegas to do the business planning?
Well, it was a pretty easy hell yes,
Yeah.
because we were already working together, um and so well, working together so well that it felt like a very easy, absolutely yes, sign me up decision. Um and I knew that, again, having your guidance of taking what I've done in the past, which is I have sat down at the end of a year and I have looked at what did this last year look like and what did we accomplish and how did we get there? But I've never known how to take that to, okay, so but how do we apply that to the year ahead?
Mm,
And and great, other than rinse, repeat, and try and do more, that's that I've never really known what to do with that year-end review information. And so I was very excited to get a great learning lesson on how to plan for a year ahead.
yeah.
Yes, look behind, but how do we really plan for what's coming down the road? And I mean, I would just say that aside from maybe the Luann Live where I met you, that was the single most impactful business trip I've been on as a business owner in 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take that in for a minute since I tell my clients to celebrate
Celebrate
their
your
wins.
wins.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. All right. And so, what are some tangible things that you left with? So, when we did this, it was the beginning of November. And I know because I worked with you and coached you afterwards, but you left with a very clear end of Q4 plan, not just a 2025
Yes.
plan. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so how did that feel to know what you didn't need to worry about while you're navigating holidays and the end of the year, like pressure of, wrapping things up? Like, I feel like you were super clear, like, here's my list. And also, I'm going to enjoy the holidays with the family and I'm going to close out the year because you were confident with a solid Q1 plan.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was another weight off my shoulders. It was another moment to breathe and enjoy the time with the family, and like you said, not have to worry about wrapping up the year in a certain way. We had already really accomplished everything that was needed to accomplish
Yeah.
in 2024. There was a few things to check off the list in the short period of time that we had left before the end of the year. But it was a great, I did walked away with a great plan for 2025, and goals associated to various different categories or buckets of your business, also incorporating personal to make sure that, again, we're still keeping in mind that our business should feed us as human beings, and the specific goals within each of those categories, action items associated to them. What did I need in order to get them done? Was it time? Was it money? Was it tech? Was it team? Was it, whatever? And whether or not they were just single projects or if it was a new reoccurring element of the business that was going to be changed and incorporated moving forward.
Yeah.
It was so much tangible, actionable strategies associated to our individual businesses.
Yeah. So what Amy's walking you through is the framework that I, had them go through to get really clear on the projects, the actionables, the timeline, the resources. And all of that is in pursuit of clarity, because when we have clarity, we can run towards taking action. But so often we can start a year, we can finish a quarter, and it feels blurry and it can be under overwhelm. And that's what I wanted to not have you guys leave there with, was like not being overwhelmed, but yet excited with a plan you could run towards rather.
I loved too that you had us really start from a big picture. One of the first activities that you had us work on was creating a word for our year. And it was a remarkably challenging activity in the moment. But, I sort of was writing notes and thoughts and feelings down, and you called on me to ask to share what my word was. And at that moment, I didn't actually have it. But I don't know if this ever happens to you, where you look down at your notes and all of a sudden like words pop off the page. And I had one of those experiences where I looked down at my notes and it just like popped off the page, time and space. And it just immediately felt like it resonated so perfectly for the year, personally and professionally.
I felt like it resonated for everybody in the room. I must have said the words time and space maybe 50 more times over the next 2 days, because the way that you had explained it, the way that you had shared why it was so meaningful, and I did not know that it was the pressure of me calling on you and these words just popped off, because the whole background to why those words mean something to you, your family, the kids, was so impactful to me as well. I love that you just said that you were able to journal and process. And so when you think of a business planning event, it's like do, but I really created a lot of time to have that self-reflection and collaboration to bounce ideas off of everybody else in the room. I felt was just as important as walking away with an action plan.
It really was. It ended up being a group of ladies that was in the room, but all of us just really had something to give to everybody else, and I felt like I learned so much from everybody else and what they shared and their goals or their challenges or whatever it was. There just was so much giving in that space.
Yeah. I feel like it was obviously, as the host, you want to create a safe space, but it wasn't me that just created it. It was literally curated with amazing women, business owners that you all were in different places on each of the journeys. I don't even know how to say that. Like, say it's pricing and you're like, everyone's on a different part of the journey. So someone else that's further ahead is going to help someone else. And then maybe it was marketing and maybe it was whatever. And everybody was coming from a different perspective and place on the journey that overall in business, everybody was contributing such great ideas, inspiring, right? Like, hey, I really had a hard time with this and this is how I struggled and here's what helped me get through it. And you're like, oh, so I'm not alone in my struggle. That's really important to know and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, it really was such an incredible event that you put on.
Wonderful. Well, I cannot wait to do it again. And that's why we're sharing with our listeners about it, because stay tuned. We'll be sharing more information about the next event that I'll be hosting. And it may or may not be in Vegas, but it will be just as amazing and curated with amazing business owners that you're going to want to be in the room with as you are navigating. And I just want to close with this. You don't need to come having the answers. Like, that's the purpose of this event, is to explore, journal, question, collaborate, and get the answers. And I think a lot of people might say no to themselves, like, oh, well, I need to have the answers to make the plan. And that's not what that was about for any of you.
No, it was about having the time and space.
Well done.
To reflect, to really reflect and just, think about what you had accomplished or what maybe you had hoped to accomplish but didn't quite happen for the year before. And what were the big dreams and the big goals and aspirations for the year ahead? And how do we plan to make it happen?
Incredible. Well, thank you for sharing your experience. Do you have anything you want to close out with or share that I didn't ask you about your experience with coaching or with working with me?
I would say that on the one hand, part of me is like, I shouldn't have waited so long to get coaching. But on the other hand, I fully believe that everything happens at the time and when it's supposed to happen and in the way in which it's supposed to happen. And working with you has been such an incredible journey. And I really can't thank you enough for helping me in the business that I've created so much.
It is my pleasure. This is literally what brings me joy is helping business owners like yourself. You're incredibly talented. You bring so much to the table. And when I can partner with you and just tweak a few things and ask some questions and support and encourage you to get results like this is what brings me the drive to want to grow my business and help others. So thanks for being an amazing client. Thanks for doing the homework. Thanks for taking action. All of those things really matter in getting the results that you got.
Well, thank you for bringing your whole heart and your whole self to coaching.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Well, what did you think? Isn't Amy amazing? She has done so much right as a business owner. Not only is she an incredibly talented designer, she is a business owner. And in fact, it turns out she loves being a business owner, which makes my heart so happy. What you heard was a business owner who is coachable. She's an action taker. She's so clear about what her why is. And all of those elements are what contributed to her success and the outcomes that she had through coaching. You may not have all the answers. You may not have all the answers in your business. In fact, I would argue nobody has all the answers. But if you are coachable and you are willing to take action and you can be driven by something bigger than the day-to-day of your business, whatever your why is, then like Amy, you are ready for coaching. And I just want to say one last thing. You may not know what your why is, but as long as you are coachable and you're willing to take action, we can actually discover what your big why is together. Because I believe that we need to know what we're running towards and what is driving us. Because man, business is not for the faint of heart. And it really does make the day-to-day challenges easier if we know that we're working towards something bigger and more meaningful. I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast, and I sure hope you found it to be valuable to hear the relationship and the journey of coaching in your business. Well, specifically Amy's business, but I bet you could see yourself in those similar situations yourself. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on what we shared today, based on some of the challenges we were navigating and some of the strategies that Amy has implemented in her business, are there any that you can take and implement in yours? I do want to say that while in the interview we mentioned this, I just want to highlight this again. There is no one-size-fits-all strategy that works for everybody the same way. And we tried to highlight that in why did I make certain suggestions? What was the context? What was the bigger picture? What assets does she already have in the business? And you need to be cautioned to not take advice and be like, tape it over your business. This is going to work for you because it looks exactly the same. The nuances matter. So, even though you probably learned some great things, ensure you run it through your own filter and ask yourself, will this work for my business? or maybe some variation of the strategy will work for your business. And lastly, if you're ready to take action, book a discovery call. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/call to book a discovery call so that we can talk about if working together is the next right step for you and your business. Again, to learn more about coaching and book that call, head on over to amberdelagarza.com. And if you are new here and this is your first episode, I welcome you. Thank you so much. Be sure to go back and listen to some of the other episodes where I do a lot of teaching and they're not all case studies, and you'll get a better idea of future episodes that you're going to hear on Small Business Straight Talk. If you've been here for a while and you found today's episode to be valuable, share it with another business owner who you think would help on their journey. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.